Hi, do you know what personality patterns are that we've created as children as perhaps survival patterns at that particular time? Well, if you wanted to know more about what they are, that's possibly what ends up running our lives. In fact, I'll put a big high percentage that most of us that are watching this video now are actually operating most of the time from some form of personality pattern that was created many years ago by a survival pattern. My name's Stephen Bones, by the way, and I'm going to do a series of videos now getting deeper and deeper into this, because this is a huge subject, but it controls most of our lives. And what I can say to you is, whatever you're feeling, be it overwhelm, stress, fear, anger, it can be healed, it can be released, and it comes back from these survival patterns going back to early childhood, which I've spoke about before, but I've sort of fleeted over them and gave a general overview. So to start with, what I mean by this is we look through our eyes, and our eyes deceive us. So what we perceive is our reality. Let me try and explain a little bit deeper. What I'm trying to open our minds to a little bit is, for instance, do we operate on a daily basis from a winning point of view? So who's up, who's down, what's happening, what's not happening? Or do we operate from a losing point of view? Timid, I'll never get there, oh I can't do that, this won't allow me, and so on. And let me give you another example of a survival pattern. For instance, and how our senses and our eyes can deceive us. For instance, let's take two scenarios. You're in a house, the fire's lit, and you're watching a scary, spooky movie. And all of a sudden, the lights go out. There's a power cut. All of a sudden, your senses become really heightened, and that survival pattern starts to come in of every creaking floorboard, every bang, every noise. The dog moves, something outside, footsteps or noises and rustles in the trees. Your senses are really heightened, and you end up in this fear situation. Now let's take the movie back a little bit and start again and go from a loving situation. So you're watching a love story on the television, and you're certainly within yourself and you're feeling really loving and emotional about what's happening. You're in the film, you're perhaps relating it to an experience you've had with somebody in the past, or even present, somebody that you're really devoted to. And the lights go out, there's a power cut, the television goes off. Once you've got over, oh, there's been a power cut, the fire's still lit, the wind's flowing through the trees, but all of a sudden you're coming at it from a loving space, a loving point of view. And I can give you then, going back to childhood, about a personality pattern, for instance, survival pattern that happens if we reach out to be comforted and loved because we hurt ourselves. Now, if the carer says to us, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, all of a sudden we start to put in a survival strategy to overcome that, because what's happened is we're releasing the trauma of whatever's upset us. So that's creating energy, and if somebody then says that to us, And I can relate to that story because I even remember that happening to me, and that's what brought me down to this rabbit hole and learning all about this information, this amazing, incredible information about how we operate. Interestingly enough, that particular scenario happened to me. So stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. So at that moment in time, whenever that was, I was releasing the trauma of the incident that had really upset me, and I was only a child, maybe 6 years old. And because I couldn't release it, and I didn't get also the security that I was wanting from a carer, because they were angry for whatever reason they were angry, and they come out with what they came out with of stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. All of a sudden then I went into a fear mode of that scenario as well. So all of a sudden I'm trying to survive those two instances. Now when that happens, that preconditioning, we create a survival pattern. And in that instance for me, it was probably a fight, aggressive pattern that's began to create. And then over the period of time, as I reached out and didn't get that comfort and love and security I wanted, that pattern would be reinforced and I became aggressive and angry. And really it was created by sadness inside that I wasn't actually getting what I wanted. And that is a survival pattern. That survival pattern then, once it gets repeated and reinforced through our life, in our early life, it then stays with us as an adult, and it's what's called a personality pattern. And that's what we're going to be talking about over this series of videos, personality patterns and how they affect our lives, because that instance, I can get triggered, or I used to get triggered quite a lot when those sort of instances came along, and I was quite an angry person for most of my life and thought that that was normal, because going back to the whatever we perceive is reality, I told myself that at that time, that what was happening to me, that what I was understanding had actually was what everybody felt. That was my perception. My eyes had deceived me, and I didn't think there was. So I looked at a small slice of the cake and not the whole cake, and for many, many decades I'd stayed with that slice of cake, didn't realise there was more until I became into a more understanding and got deeper and deeper. And as soon as that peripheral vision was opened, it was absolutely amazing. I started doing all this type of work to begin to understand it. So that's a sample of personality patterns. There are actually 5 of them. I'm going to be talking about them as we're going along, and probably you'll relate to it, maybe you won't. I have a website, stephenbones.com, if ever you want to go and visit that and see what I'm about, you're quite welcome to. But I'll see you on the next video, and we can discuss this in a bit more detail and start to understand what it's all about. So thanks for listening, and I'll catch you soon.